Life Stories.
How did you manage to keep your feet on the ground? As you say, you didn't let the fame get to you. How did you manage to keep your feet on the ground and keep grounded?
Well, I kept the same set of friends. My friends didn't change. They were always very good at keeping me grounded. And I think it's seeing the job for what it is. It's an incredibly privileged job to do, a wonderful job to do. But it's just a TV program at the end of the day, and we're not saving lives. We're just trying to give kids a bit of constructive programming 3 times a week, try and inspire them, try and educate them, entertain them, but we're not lifesavers. So it was seeing it for what it was, and actually realizing very early on, I'd say the whole fame angle probably interested me for about 6 months, and after that I just thought there's something so hollow about it, because you come away from a conversation where someone stopped you in the street and you realize they're not really asking anything about you. It's the fact that you're the guy they see on the telly. And I can see and I know why fame is so seductive, but actually when you get it, it's actually a very empty thing that leaves far more questions than it ever answers.
Now, you said you had this great expectation, a weight on your shoulders going into Blue Peter as a Christian, and it was, there's plenty in the media. Just tell us a little bit about how you yourself became a Christian. Like, you said your dad was a vicar, but how did it actually happen for you to become a Christian?
Well, I obviously grew up in a Christian household, so God was part of life, and church was part of life. A lot of my best friends throughout all of my youth went to church, so I really enjoyed going to church. I enjoyed going to see my friends, and I knew it meant a lot for Dad to have his family there, particularly when you get to that age where you can decide to opt out. You get into your teens, and it's like, well, I'm going to sleep in today, or I'm not going to go this week. I know for him it gave him it made him proud when he had all of his family there. But yeah, you get to that point in life where you begin to question things. But I often tell this story, not just because it's dramatic, but really it was a seminal moment for me in going, do you know what, I actually, this God that I hear about on a Sunday, he's real. And we were living in a small village in Grimston, called Grimston in West Norfolk at the time, and I was 7 years of age. And it'd been one of those Saturday mornings where it just rained all morning. We were going stir crazy. Dad had been out at meetings, and I had 2 sisters. So I've got 2 sisters, Becky and Hannah. Becky was 6, and Hannah was not even 1 at this point. And we got to sort of lunchtime, and the clouds cleared and the sun began to come out. And Dad said, "Look, let's get out. Let's go for a walk." So we drove to some woods near where we live and went for a walk. And we were going down this big clearing in the middle of these woods. It's essentially just a massive pine forest, but there's other trees in there as well. And I'm at the age where if a tree's climbable, I was going up it. And we got to this really big kind of yew tree, and Thomas, sure enough, scampers up it and starts playing around. And then eventually I came and sat down with my legs dangling like this in the kind of yew bit. And my dad was sort of stood here. I remember my sister Becky stood there. My mum was holding Hannah just in front. And it started to rain again. And Mum said, "Look, I think we should move to the other side of the clearing to get shelter." And we sort of looked at her like she was slightly barking mad, because we were already being very nicely sheltered by this tree. And about half a minute later, she said it again. She said, "No, I really do think we should move across the clearing to the other side." And again, Dad sort of said, "Oh, Jill, come on, we don't need to move." And then I can still, and this is 41 years later, I can still see the look in her eye when she looked at me and Dad and said, "I really do think we need to move now." So to keep the peace, Dad said, "Look, come on, son, get down from the tree and let's move over to the other side, keep your mum happy." So over we went. And I would say probably 20 seconds later, as we get over the other side, it was like the roar of a tornado jet coming through the woods. Incredible sound. And I remember looking up and just seeing this kind of, it was like a tunnel of fire above our heads. And there was this almighty explosion. We can't see anything for the smoke. And then this huge thud. And as we looked, as the smoke cleared, the tree where I'd been sat not a minute ago had been blown apart by lightning.
Wow.
And we headed back to the car, and we're in tears and, very traumatized. And later that evening, some friends of ours, and I wish I'd got it to show you because it's an amazing picture. I've still got it. I just don't know where it is because we moved house a few weeks ago. But we went back that evening with a friend of ours, a very good photographer, and just to see the tree. And I've got a picture of this shattered tree. And some very good friends of our mum and dad were there. And Rosemary, who was a Christian as well, said to mum, she said, why did you move? Because the story, when you hear it, doesn't make any sense. And mum just said, I just heard this voice saying move. And I really do believe that was God. And actually, many, many years later, I was at a big Christian event, and this guy just came to pray for me, and he knew nothing about me. I wasn't on Blue Peter at this time. And he just said to me, he said, I've got a really strong feeling that around the age of 7, you had an experience that really demonstrated very powerfully that God is real. So I often look back when I've gone through things that have tested my faith, made me question God's character. I look back to that day and go, that's the day for me when God made himself feel very real.
Excellent. Fantastic story. Now, of course, Blue Peter wouldn't be Blue Peter without the badge. Have you got the badge with you, Simon?
Wait there. I literally
Okay.
just wait there.
We have to see the badge.
I may have one.
Well done, George.
This is the first time I've ever done this live. I'm sorry, everybody, for disappearing, but this is going to be worth it. Okay, so this is not just a badge.
Yeah, I read about this badge. Yes.
This is the one I was given on the day I left. So there's the box,
Yep.
and inside is one of these.
Wow. Now you got that.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen, a gold Blue Peter badge.
Wow. Now you got that presented to you, of course, by Her Majesty herself.
Well, no, I presented the Queen with the badge.
Oh, I see.
Badge. Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, actually, it's funny enough. I was talking about this yesterday with Ethan, my boy, because he said, "What was it like to meet the Queen?" And I said, "It's a really surreal moment because I'm betting there's probably no one on this Zoom evening who's older than the Queen. So for all of us, I think I can fairly safely say
You haven't met Ellen, obviously.
that she's been an ever present in all of our lives. You know,
Yes.
whether you're a royalist or you're not, she has been there throughout all of our lives. So when she walked into the studio that day, and it was part of her Golden Jubilee celebration, so they were visiting her and the Duke of Edinburgh, various British institutions. I think he'd gone to British Airways that day, and the Queen was coming to visit BBC Television Centre, and she was going to see 2 shows. One was BBC News and the other was ours. So we had this long lineup in the studio of past presenters. So Valerie Singleton and Peter Purvis were there, former editors like the famous editor Biddy Baxter, lots of people who've been involved both now and before were in the studio. So there's this huge long lineup. And my boss said, look, we want you, Simon, at the end of the line to be the one who gives the Queen the gold Blue Peter badge, basically because we think you're the one least likely to mess it up.
Tell us a bit about your upbringing, your journey to faith and into ministry as a priest.
So I was born in Sheffield in 1970. Don't want to give too much away. And I'm from a non-religious family. My parents had me christened as a baby, like lots of people are christened when they're little, but didn't actually take me to church. We never went to church. And it was only when I was at secondary school and my friend had a friend who I liked the look of. And I said to my friend Katie, who's he? And she said, oh, he's the vicar's son. And I thought, I think I might start going to church. So I essentially went along to church because I fancied the bloke who was the vicar's son. But God had the last laugh on that one, really. And it was from, actually, in all seriousness, it was from being in a place of invitation, a place where I was made to feel welcome, where there was friendship, where there was community, and where I was given a space as quite an angry teenager, quite a shouty, loud teenager. Now, it's hard to believe that I was quite loud. A place to be able to argue about the world as I saw it and try and figure out who I was.
Tell us about the viral video that kind of brought you from being the priest to then into media.
So when I started in full-time parish ministry, in 2011, I think it was, I took over 3 churches and a chaplaincy. And one of my churches that I was looking after was an old priory church. So a big, huge cathedral-like building in the middle of a village with lots of seating, absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous building, but a gorgeous building that only did about 6 weddings a year. And I thought, this is such a great place, we should be doing hundreds of weddings. So I built up the weddings ministry, and basically anyone who came along to me and said, we'd like to get married, if I was legally able to marry them, I married them, including Gary and Tracy, who had been engaged for 8 years and wanted a little bit of something different at their wedding, as invariably brides and grooms do. They always want their service to be personalised. So I asked Gary and Tracy what they wanted. They said, what do you do? I said, pretty much anything. And we came upon the idea of doing a flash mob at their wedding. Now, I know flash mobs are definitely a bit 1990s, but the Church of England is always a good healthy 20 years behind the trends and the curve, isn't it? So we did this dance at their wedding. It was filmed by their video company, by their videographer that was videoing their wedding, and they put it on YouTube so that the guests that weren't able to be at their big day could come along and be at their wedding and see what had happened. And we never expected it to go where it went, and I think the current count on the original clip is about 10 million hits, which is a bit weird.
So then you went from that to Gogglebox. What was that like? And what was it like from that moment to be a recognised person on the streets?
So after the flash mob, I got a telephone call from Studio Lambert, the production team behind Gogglebox, and they asked us if we'd like to be on the show. And we didn't just go, yeah, because it's not just one of those things when you wear a dog collar for a living, you have to be aware that you're not just representing yourself, you're representing the organisation of the church as well, and you're representing God ultimately. So you have to give it a little bit of thought. So we said yes, and the reason that we said yes, me and my husband Graham said yes to it, is lots of the Christians we'd seen on television, lots of the stories of faith we'd seen on television were not the Christians that we knew. They were the extremes of the story. They were the really, really bad news about what religion can do, and the really, really good news about what religion can do. The sort of normal, average kind of Christians that sit and watch TV weren't on telly. And we thought, well, maybe this is a chance to show that Christians are normal people. They just happen to believe in God. And so that's why we said yes. And Gogglebox is regularly watched by over an audience of 3 million people. It's won BAFTAs and NTAs and all. It's part of the popular culture. And to be a Christian on that show that people are talking about is just such an amazing privilege. Do I think anyone's going to fall on their knees in front of reality TV and accept the Lord Jesus Christ as their saviour? No. But do I think they might feel a little bit of warmth about Christians? Yeah, they might do. And that's good enough for me. And the question about being recognised in the street and the whole sort of, people asking for selfies and all that sort of stuff. When you're a vicar, you're a bit of a local celebrity anyway. You can't get round Tesco, no matter how hard you try, because people want to stop you to talk to you. It's just a bigger version of that, really. And if I was shy, I wouldn't have said yes, would I?
I love what you said in this last session about you can reach more people through songs of praise than the amount of people that go to church in this country. Tell us a bit about that.
So it's not about bums on seats, we're not, when we get to those gates, Jesus is not going to say, okay, what's your numbers? It don't work like that. But what we will be asked is, what did you do for the sake of the kingdom? And for me, I believe that part of my calling is to be upfront, is to be outgoing, I'm a dreadful show off and a bit of an egotistical maniac. So if God can use that, because I genuinely believe that God wants to use every single bit of us, the bits that society might think are brilliant and the bits that they might think are rubbish, God goes, yeah, I'll have that. Yeah, I'll have that. So the fact that I'm a show off, God's gone, yeah, all right then. You want to show off? You want to show off? Come with me, I'll let you show off. It's about using the best of ourselves and the worst of ourselves for the kingdom. And so and also, do you know what? I do a lot of funerals where there's nothing to say in the eulogy. I want the vicar that does mine to have a good half an hour's worth of material to go at.
We saw a real raw side to you in the road to Santiago. Tell us what that experience was like. And it was tough, but it was a great opportunity again to be on TV and talk about your faith.
It was, I think the thing about the road to Santiago is I don't like walking. I don't know if that came across. And when you're a Christian, and by and large, lots of Christians are white, middle class kind of Christians, when you tell them you don't like walking, it's like they can't compute that. You know, if you told someone you didn't like swimming or you didn't like riding a bike, people go, oh, fair enough. You say you don't like walking, people just look at you like you've killed a kitten. You know, so there's something about Christians and walking that it seems like it's sort of a foregone conclusion that if you're a Christian, you must love walking. I don't, all right? I like sofas and televisions and gin and tonic. That's what I like, all right? It was a tough gig because of the walking. Everything else was easy. The people bit, the talking about God bit, I could do that. You know, that's great. I could do that all the time. But the actual one foot in front of the other was the really tricky bit for me. And the other tricky bit is that as a Christian, lots of people presume that they know what you believe. So they'll say, oh, well, you believe that the world was made in 6 days. And you'll go, no, I don't. And they'll go, but it says so in the Bible. It also says that you should stone adulterers and not get a tattoo. It says a lot of things in the Bible. We're not taking it literally. I've got a fairly liberal interpretation of that, and I believe it's a document that can be interpreted. You will find Christians that take it literally, and fair play to them. But I don't. And this came as a revelation. Now, I think, that something as simple as I don't think God's an old man on a cloud with a beard. I don't think God's an old man on a cloud with a beard. Now, we would think that, Christians might think that, well, who does believe that God's an old man on a cloud and a beard? I don't think I know any Christians. But actually, people who aren't of the faith think we still believe that stuff. They still think we believe that God's like some sort of cosmic Santa Claus. And so there's a massive gap between where we think we are in the conversation about faith in popular culture and where actually we are. There's a huge gap. People still think we're the dad's army vicars, and they're very few and far between these days.
Last question. It must be a challenge not only being a female priest, but a female priest on TV. What challenge?
A female northern priest on TV.
Northern priest.
A female northern ginger priest on TV.
What prejudice or challenges have you faced in the middle of all of that, and what advice would you give to people, for Christians, to be a voice in the media?
Well, first of all, you have to be convinced that you should be the person speaking. So it's about vocation, it's about calling. Do I think that every single vicar in the land, every single Christian in the land should be on telly? No, I don't. Some people are not called to that. Some people are called to do other things for the faith. I happen to believe that this is part of my vocation. If you happen to believe that it's part of your vocation too, if you've prayerfully considered that, if you've talked it through with spiritual directors, with your parish priest, with all those wise people in your life, and you still think, I think I've got a vocation to the media, well then you have to go for it. And you have to be confident in that calling. And it's like any vocation, whether your vocation is doing the children's work in church, being up at the front, whatever it is, there are no greater or higher vocations and callings. We know that. God doesn't look at the bishops and go, oh, they're the best ones. Similarly, he doesn't look at the person washing the teacups and go, well, they don't matter. It's all are welcome in that kingdom vocation. So find out what your thing is and do it as best you can. And value your thing, whether other people value it or not. And the prejudices and the challenges that I've faced, to be honest with you, have been few and far between. Sometimes the hardest thing is that the minute anyone sees this around my neck, is they think they know what I believe and they think they know what I'm going to be like. And I find that usually within the first 5 minutes that changes. Once I've opened my mouth and said it, they go, oh, you're not like a proper vicar, are you? Well, I'm not really sure what a proper vicar is, but I can guarantee that I am one. I've got a certificate and everything.
One more question, I did promise. Who have been your role models, your sort of mentors over the years?
So I have a core group of about 16 friends who I call Team Botley, who are in a closed Facebook group, and they are my biggest mentors and advisors. And in that group is everyone from the first person that ever invited me to church, to a bishop, to famous people, to non-famous people. All sorts of people are in that group. And whenever I have something that I need to think about, whenever a piece of work comes in that's offered to me, I will always run it by them. I post my daily diary in there, and they pray it through. And they also tell me to catch myself on. So if I'm offered a piece of work that they think would be really bad for the kingdom and we don't think it's on message, then they will say that to me. They'll go, Kate Botley, you've missed it. Or if I mess up spectacularly, I saw you on the one show the other night, Kate, you were dreadful. They'll tell me so that I can then be the best version that I can be, so that I can fulfill my vocation. But I will get it wrong and I will mess it up. And I have to remember that, you know, I'm loved, I'm forgiven, not just by the people that advise me and look after me, but also by my Heavenly Father, which is amazing. And get a good agent who gets it, who understands that it's not just about the money, it's about building the kingdom.
Life
So
stories.
about an hour before the Queen arrived, her press secretary came into the studio, and we were all lined up, and she came along to each of us and said, "What are you going to say to the Queen?" And she also told us what you do in terms of, you know, right language and bowing and all those kind of things. And I said, "Well, I'm going to do a gag." And she said, "Well, Queen doesn't do gags." And I told her what I was going to say. She said, "You cannot say that. I'm going to come back in 5 minutes and I'll let you know what you can, you know, give me something else." Anyway, she came back about 5 minutes later. She said, "Look, if you stick to those words, you can say the joke." I went, "Okay." So anyway, so eventually in comes the Queen, and it's like you feel you know her because she's been an ever-present. It's like for a moment you think it's like your grandma's just walked in, and then you go, "Oh my goodness me, it's the Queen." When she stands in front of you, it is quite a moment. And so I just stood there with a blue box exactly like this. And I just said, "Your Majesty, on behalf of the programme, I'd like to award you with the programme's highest honour. It's a gold Blue Peter badge, and Your Majesty may be interested to know you can get into the Tower of London free with this." And the Queen laughed, and off she went. She went, "How lovely," and she was gone. And afterwards, I was interviewed by lots of different news channels saying, "How did you make the Queen laugh?" It's like no one had ever made her laugh before, which of course they have. But yeah, that was an amazing moment. Amazing moment.
Fantastic. What an end to your career, of course, because following the BBC, you jumped across to Sky Sports. Was that a big wrench for you?
No, I mean, yeah, it's a wrench to leave a show like that, but you know when you get the job that your lifespan on it, it's not a job for life. You know you're going to be on there. Probably most presenters average around 5-6 years. So I knew probably 6 years would be about the time. The thing about the show is it's an amazing show to work on, but it demands an awful lot of your life. You know, you are essentially theirs for those six years. And yeah, there's lots of things socially, life events I missed out on because we would be away filming or something. So that's kind of the only real downside of the job. And I think there comes a time where if you're not careful, you can stay too long and begin to fall out of love with it. And I always wanted to go while I still loved it, to go on a high. And that's a hard way to leave. But I think it's the best way, because then you are just left with happy memories. I mean, I won't say their names, but there have been presenters down the years who have stayed too long. They fell out of love with the programme and became quite bitter about their experiences of it. And it was no one else's fault. It's just they stayed too long. Yeah. And I felt it was just important to go out on a high. So I always said to myself, 5 to 6 years. And then my next ambition was to get into the world of sport.
Now, before we just finish with Blue Peter, one last thing I wanted to ask you about, Peter. Of all the things you've done, like the skydives, the mountain climbing, what was the most exhilarating thing you ever did for Blue Peter?
Very good question. I think the most exhilarating would be the skydiving, because it became a lot harder than I ever envisaged it. I've never had an issue with heights, and I'd made it clear to the program quite early on. You know, when the time came to do another parachuting film, because they've done quite a few down the years, I'd love to do it. Mm-hmm. And so we were going to make a film where I would go out to San Diego, because it's where the RAF Falcons do all their winter training, because it's blue skies every day. And I would learn to freefall parachute jump with them. And then the idea was the next summer back at the UK at one of the big air shows, I would do a skydive with the Falcons, a display with them. Mm-hmm. So out to San Diego we went, and it's, you know, just hugely exciting. And I think it was probably about jump number 5. So we've done 4 jumps, and when you start off learning to free fall, you jump out the plane with an instructor either side of you. So you've got one of these red suits that's got these ribbed things along the side, so they can hold on to you, because they're trying to get your body position right as you drop. Because once you're stable, then you can begin to maneuver yourself in the air. And they stay with you until the moment you pull your parachute, and then they keep dropping a little bit further and then open theirs. So everything had been going fine. I think we got to jump number 5, and Down we go. You're dropping at 120 miles per hour over San Diego, over the hills. And I pulled my chutes at 5,500 feet, which is the level I was supposed to pull it at. And it felt a lot longer than it was, but it was still quite a significant amount of time. Nothing happens. I remember as we're dropping, I can sort of sense this punch on the back, which is coming from Roger and Toby, the two instructors. And eventually, thankfully, I mean, you got a reserve chute, of course, but the thing came out and up it went and everything was fine. But as we did after every jump, they would sit down with you because we've got a cameraman coming down with us who's filming it as he skydives. And we looked back at the jump. And to my horror, I see the moment that I pull the chute and I'm just watching, as I suspected, Roger and Toby literally thumping this backpack to get this chute out. And at that point, my bottle totally went. And I'll tell this one story because I think it's from a Christian point of view, was an amazing moment. So what happened is that particular trip became a bit of a disaster. I think I managed 4 jumps more and I couldn't do it anymore. It was just every time I went into a plane, just, the fear levels were just too much to handle. So in the end, they said, look, we're going to have to call it a day and maybe come back again some other time and try it. So I went and did a few jumps back in the UK that next spring, got my bottle back, and I managed to persuade the program to fly me out to San Diego again to do a film about conquering fear, because that's quite a powerful thing. The first film had been a very honest film about how difficult it was and how I couldn't overcome my fears. And I thought, well, let's make the next film about the journey to overcoming fear. So back we went, and I thought it was going to be fine, but we're staying in exactly the same hotel as the year before. So you walk in, you know how sights and sounds and smells stir up memories. And it's like, oh no, I'm back. And all those fears from 18 months before began to come back. I had this utterly sleepless night. I couldn't stop thinking. And actually the question in my head going again and again and again was, if these 2 bits of material that are going to be strapped to my back tomorrow both fail, which is highly unlikely, you're safer doing a parachute jump than you are driving in your car. That's the reality. But it was causing me to think, if that did happen, is this God I follow, is he actually real? Because I'm going to find out. I'm maybe going to find out tomorrow, if it all goes horribly wrong, whether this God I believe in is actually real or not. So I couldn't sleep. And I sat down my director the next day, same director from the time before, and he looked at me and said, you look awful. What's happened? I said, no, it's fine. Anyway, I rang up a very close Christian friend of mine. He's a guy called Phil Wall. He's worked for the Salvation Army for many years, and he's become a real mentor for me. And he said, look, anytime you want to chat, he knew I was quite worried about the trip, so just give us a shout and I'll pray, even if it's the middle of the night. So before we went to get in the minibus to drive to the drop zone, I gave Phil a ring. And I just said, mate, I am really struggling. I don't think I can jump. And I've just got the program to bring me out again. I'm going to waste all their money. But I've got palpitations. I'm sweating. I don't want to go anywhere near an aeroplane today. And he just said, mate, I know. He said, just let me pray for you. He said, just let me pray for you right now. Because I told him about the mental screw of what if everything fails and I find out that this faith that I have isn't real. It isn't true. And he said, let me pray for you. And he said, I just remember the prayer so clearly. He just said, and I was standing outside the hotel. He said, God, I pray right now that you, God, would just give Simon a real tangible reminder that he and you are real, and give him the confidence to go to that airfield today and jump. Amen. So I said, thanks, mate. Put the phone down. And I thought it'd be nice to get some of the RAF guys coming to the drop zone, some donuts, some Dunkin' Donuts, which was just opposite. So I thought, I'll just pop over there, get a box of donuts, get the boys G'd up. I didn't feel any better, by the way, from Phil's prayer. It was nice, but I didn't suddenly feel no fear anymore. And as I was just about to walk back over the road to the hotel, I was waiting for the green man. You can't do what we do here and go when the man's not green. And as I was waiting, I felt this tap on my shoulder. And I looked around. There's this young guy. I can still see him now, blonde hair. And he just looked at me. He doesn't know me from Adam. And he just said, I want you to know that Jesus is real.
Wow. Stories. Life Stories.